Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. She's marrying a millionaire? Sophie repeated, staring at her phone like it was some kind of bad joke. Who? Your wicked sister? Asked Mia, her best friend, chewing a croissant with her mouth full. The very one. And guess what? My dad texted me, asking me to go to the wedding, and he even added, wear something decent. As if I'd show up wearing a trash bag, Sophie said, rolling her eyes. He thinks I'm the embarrassment of the family. So, are you going? Of course I am, but I'm not going alone. Sophie crossed her arms with a mischievous smile. What? Are you taking the pizza delivery guy? No, I'm hiring a fake boyfriend just to impress that witch. A model, an actor, anyone who looks expensive, Sophie replied. Mia's eyes widened. Friend, you barely have enough money to buy soap. How are you going to pay for a boyfriend? Sophie grabbed her phone and started searching on a classified website. There must be a cheaper option. 2 seconds later, she let out a scream. Oh my gosh, they charge by the hour. I'd have to work for a whole year to afford a fake boyfriend. And that doesn't even include a kiss. Mia added, laughing loudly. With that, you might get a quick hug if you're lucky. Sophie opened her wallet dramatically and counted 1, 2. There, $2. Mia tried to hold back her laughter. With that, you might get a quick hug if you're lucky. Who would accept that? Sophie muttered, tossing the coins onto the table. A lunatic. A ghost. A robot with a dead battery. Very funny, Sophie grumbled, sighing. Then a voice came from beside them. I'll take it. Sophie and Mia turned at the same time. A tall man in a dark suit with a sharp smile stood there, holding a cup of coffee. Sorry. What? Sophie asked, suspicious. I heard your offer. $2 to pretend to be your boyfriend for a day. I'm in, he said. Mia's eyes widened. Who are you? A failed actor? An undercover detective? A magician? A Russian spy? Lucas, he replied. And no, none of the above. I just thought it sounded fun. Sophie studied him, far too handsome to be offering his services for 2 coins. Perfect hair, eyes that could melt ice, and a mysterious air like someone who'd lived through 3 soap operas. Are you kidding? No. If you want, I'll be your official boyfriend for the evening. I can even hold hands and smile like in those butter commercials. But I really only have $2, Sophie said. Lucas shrugged and pushed the coins back to her with a smile. That covers the coffee. The rest I'm doing for fun, Mia whispered. Friend, this is starting to feel like the beginning of a movie. We just don't know if it's a romantic comedy or a thriller. Sophie looked at Lucas once more. There was something about him familiar, but she couldn't place it. Okay, Saturday. My sister's wedding. Rich. Boring people. And you need to look expensive. I'm great at looking expensive, he said with a sly smile. Send me the address. I'll be there. And before she could say another word, he walked away as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Sophie and Mia stood frozen, staring after him. You just hired a boyfriend for $2, Mia said, stunned. If he's not a thief, this is going to be a great story. Sophie was still trying to process everything, but something about his face told her this wasn't a coincidence. And it wasn't. Lucas knew her, and she had rejected him many years ago, but now she had just paid to go out with him. The wedding day arrived, and Sophie spent the whole morning getting ready with a dress borrowed from Mia, shoes that pinched her feet, and makeup she redid 3 times until she felt presentable for high society. As she put it, when Lucas arrived to pick her up, she almost choked. He was unrecognizable. A tailored suit that looked more expensive than 6 months of her rent. A watch that glimmered subtly on his wrist, and a fragrance that made any woman within 5 feet sigh without meaning to. Wow, was all Sophie managed to say. Happy with your $2 investment? Lucas smiled faintly, offering his arm. Where did you get that outfit? Did you rent it too? Let's just say I have my resources. Sophie frowned. Something didn't add up, but there was no time to dig deeper. Her sister's wedding was already going to be a minefield. Questioning her fake boyfriend could wait. The wedding venue was enough to intimidate anyone. Huge gardens, decorations that cost more than a car, and guests who looked like they'd stepped straight out of a celebrity magazine. Relax, Lucas whispered in her ear when he noticed her tension. You look beautiful. Thank you. And you look suspicious. Suspicious? No one looks that good for just $2. You must be up to something. Lucas chuckled softly. Maybe I am. Sophie didn't have time to process his answer because her sister Chloe appeared like a storm of white tulle and arrogance. "Sophie, what a surprise," Chloe said, her tone sweet but full of venom. "And who's this?" "Lucas, my boyfriend." Sophie forced a smile. Lucas offered his hand politely. "Nice to meet you. Sophie talks about you all the time." "Oh, really?" Chloe gave Sophie a suspicious look. "So, what do you do, Lucas?" "I work." "Where do you work?" "In an office." Sophie almost laughed at how vague that was. Chloe, clearly frustrated at not getting more details, gave a fake smile and walked away. "In an office? That's the best you could come up with?" Sophie whispered. "It worked, didn't it?" During the ceremony, Sophie noticed how much attention Lucas was getting, not just from her, but from all the women there. He had a confident posture, the kind of presence that quietly said, "Success," and when he smiled at her, it seemed too genuine to be fake. "Have you done this before?" she asked softly. "Done what?" "Pretended to be someone's boyfriend." "First time. What about you? Ever hired a fake boyfriend before?" "Also the first time. We're improvising together." Lucas smiled. "I like improvising." The most awkward moment came during the reception. Sophie's father, always a charming man, decided to give a speech about family and tradition, looking directly at Sophie like she was the official black sheep. "And of course, we're happy that our Sophie has also found someone special," he said with the enthusiasm of someone announcing a disease. Everyone turned to look at them. Sophie felt her face burning with embarrassment, but Lucas stood up gracefully and raised his glass. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. Sophie really is special. I'm lucky she gave me a chance." The entire room sighed together. Even Chloe looked a little impressed. Sophie stared at Lucas like he was from another planet. "How did you know my dad's last name?" "You mentioned it." "I didn't mention it." Lucas winked. "I have a good memory." During dinner, the questions kept coming. How did they meet? How long had they been together? Any plans for the future? Lucas answered everything like he was used to being interrogated. "So, where did you two meet?" asked a curious aunt. "At a coffee shop," Lucas replied. Sophie was complaining about life, and I thought she was authentic. Sophie nearly spit out her wine. "Authentic? It's a compliment," he whispered. The big twist came during the couple's toast. Everyone was standing, glasses raised, when Lucas leaned close to Sophie's ear. "You turned me down in high school, and now you paid to go out with me." Sophie froze. Her glass almost slipped from her hand. "What?" "West High School, 2018. You were with your popular friends by the lockers when I tried to ask you to the dance. Remember?" Sophie's face went pale. The memories hit her like a wave. A shy, skinny boy with giant glasses and braces. She had laughed at him in front of everyone. "Lucas Parker Evans now," he said. "I changed my last name when my parents got divorced." "Oh my gosh." Sophie started laughing nervously, catching the attention of people around them. "You can't be him." The Lucas from high school was a nerd, a mess, a loser. He smiled, amused. "People change, Sophie. But you had glasses and braces, and that ridiculous Batman backpack, contacts, braces off, and better taste. It does wonders." Sophie was having an existential crisis in the middle of her sister's wedding. She laughed, stopped, looked at him, then laughed again. "You planned this? Planned it? You're the one who found me at a coffee shop yelling that you needed a fake boyfriend for $2. But you recognized me?" "Of course I did. You still laugh the same way when you're nervous." Sophie covered her mouth, horrified. "Am I laughing loud? Like a happy hyena?" "Stop." She hit his arm, laughing even harder. The rest of the night was a whirlwind of emotions. Sophie kept staring at Lucas, trying to see the awkward boy she once rejected. But all she saw was a confident, successful man with a quiet charm. "Do you really work in an office?" she asked as they danced. "I do. But what's your role?" "Let's just say I have a few responsibilities." "You're being vague again, and you're being awfully curious for someone who paid me $2. Best $2 I ever spent, apparently." Lucas laughed. "You haven't seen anything yet." By the end of the evening, when he dropped her off at home, Sophie was still trying to process everything. "So, now that I know who you are, does that change anything? Does it for you?" "I'm not sure. You were different. Was it easier to reject me when I was just a nerd?" Sophie made a face. "Are you going to hold that over me forever?" "Probably." "Fair enough. I deserve it." Lucas smiled. See you around. Wait, aren't you going to give me your number? You know where to find me. Same coffee shop. Same time. And he left while Sophie stood there, confused, guilty, and oddly excited. The next morning, Mia came running in with her phone in hand. Sophie, you need to see this. What is it now? Your fake boyfriend. Mia held up the phone, showing a huge headline. Billionaire CEO Lucas Evans spotted with mystery date at glamorous event. Sophie nearly fainted. Billionaire? And there's a picture. Look at you, like a princess. Sophie held the phone with shaking hands. The photo showed her dancing with Lucas. He was looking at her with an expression that definitely didn't look fake. Mia, I think I'm in way over my head. You think you hired a billionaire for $2. That's like winning the lottery without even buying a ticket. Sophie sat on the bed, staring at the picture. Lucas Evans, CEO, billionaire. And she had rejected him back in school because she didn't think he was good enough. The irony was almost poetic, and now she had no idea what to do next. Sophie was still trying to come to terms with the fact she had unknowingly hired a billionaire for $2 when her phone rang. It was her boss from the restaurant. Sophie, I need to speak with you now. Good morning to you, too, Mr. Harrison. Get down here immediately. 20 minutes later, Sophie was standing in front of her boss, who was holding a printout of the news headline like it was evidence in a crime. Can you explain this? He asked, waving the paper dramatically. It's a picture of me. A picture of you with a billionaire at some fancy event. This damages the image of our establishment. Sophie blinked, confused. How does that damage anything? That makes no sense. You're just using this as an excuse to fire me. Customers might think our employees are, I don't know, gold diggers. Mr. Harrison, with all due respect, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I've heard you say ketchup counts as gourmet seasoning. Don't be insolent. You're fired. Gather your things. Fired for dating someone? For lying about your life? You said you were just a regular waitress? Because I am a regular waitress. Sophie threw her hands up. That was a cosmic misunderstanding. Cosmic misunderstanding? Mr. Harrison frowned. It's a long story. It involves $2 and a twist of fate. You're delusional. You're fired. Sophie left the restaurant carrying a box with her belongings. A stained apron, a backup pair of shoes, and a plant that had been dying for 3 months. Perfect, she muttered. Now I'm unemployed because of a fake boyfriend who turned out to be a real CEO. My life's officially a soap opera. Mia came running. I heard you got fired. That's outrageous. We're suing that restaurant. With what money? Remember, I have exactly, Sophie checked her wallet, 50 cents and an expired pizza coupon. There's an obvious solution. What? Go talk to your billionaire. He's not my billionaire. It was a one-night agreement. Sophie, the man has been in love with you since high school, and now you're jobless because of him. Go get some answers. An hour later, Sophie stood in front of the most intimidating building in Portland. Shiny glass walls, security guards who looked like models, and a lobby nicer than her whole apartment. Excuse me, she said to the receptionist. I need to speak with Lucas Evans. The receptionist looked her up and down with a clear expression of disdain. Who is this nobody? Do you have an appointment? No, but I'm afraid that's not possible. Listen here, front desk Barbie, Sophie said, hands on her hips. I need to talk to him about a personal matter that involves $2, a wedding, and the fact I just got fired. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm not leaving until I talk to him. Just then, the elevator doors opened, and Lucas stepped out, flanked by 3 men in suits. Sophie. He looked genuinely surprised. What are you doing here? I came to get some answers, she said, marching toward him. Because of you. I got fired. Fired? My boss saw the photo in the paper and said I was damaging the image of the establishment. Apparently, dating billionaires goes against waitress ethics. The men in suits exchanged amused looks. Lucas dismissed them with a gesture. Let's talk in my office. Oh, now you want to talk? Yesterday you ran off after dropping that bomb. Sophie, you're making a scene. I'm making a scene? You're the one who showed up in my life, took $2 just for fun, and forgot to mention you practically own Portland. Lucas sighed and led her to the elevator. His office was bigger than Sophie's apartment, with a view worth more than she could make in 10 lifetimes. Well, Now I understand why you work in an office, she said, looking around. You are the office. Technically, I own the company that owns the office. Very funny. And now what? I'm unemployed because of you. Lucas sat behind the desk. I can fix that. I'll call your former boss. And no, Sophie raised her hand. I'm not working for someone who fires me over a photo. I have my pride. Then, what do you want me to do? I don't know. You're the one who caused this mess. Lucas stayed silent for a moment, then smiled. I have an offer. What kind of offer? Because the last time I took one of your offers, I ended up in the headlines. I need a companion for a corporate event tonight. Something important. In return, I'll cover all your expenses for a week. Sophie blinked. All expenses? Rent? Food? Bills? Everything? That's very generous. What's the catch? No catch. I just need someone genuine. Someone not interested in my money. And you think I'm not interested in your money? Sophie, you hired me for $2. If you cared about money, you'd have checked who I was. She thought about it. A week without worrying about bills sounded like an impossible dream. What exactly would I have to do? Be yourself. Talk to a few people. Smile for pictures. Join me for a boring dinner. That's all? Yes, that's all. I accept, but with one condition. What's that? No surprises, no shocking revelations, no ex-girlfriends showing up, no finding out you own half the planet. Lucas gave her a strange smile. Deal. 3 hours later, Sophie was in an upscale beauty salon, being prepped by a team who treated her like a human doll. You're going to look stunning, said the makeup artist. Mr. Evans has good taste in women. We're not really dating, Sophie explained. It's just business. Of course, dear. And I'm just a makeup artist, not a fairy godmother. The dress Lucas had chosen was perfect. Elegant without being flashy. Expensive without being showy. Sophie looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Wow, she whispered. Wow doesn't even cover it, said Lucas, appearing behind her. You look breathtaking. Thank you. You look very billionaire yourself. They laughed, and for the first time since the revelation, Sophie felt at ease. The event was at a 5-star hotel. Important people, business conversations Sophie didn't understand, and drinks that cost more than a weekly salary. Just smile and nod. Lucas whispered, if anyone asks about you, say you work in hospitality. Technically, that's true. Waitress is hospitality. Exactly. Everything was going smoothly until Sophie noticed a stunning blonde woman watching her with a little too much interest. She looked like she'd been born on the pages of a fashion magazine. Lucas, the woman approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Isabella, Lucas said, his tension obvious. What a surprise to see you here. I didn't know you'd be here. I'm one of the organizers. And who is your companion? Sophie felt a wave of discomfort. The way Isabella said companion made it sound like a questionable profession. Sophie Carter, she said, extending her hand. And you are? Isabella Thornton, Lucas' ex-fiancée. Sophie almost choked on her champagne. Ex-fiancée? She turned to Lucas. You forgot to mention that detail. It was a long time ago, Lucas said quickly. 3 months. Isabella corrected with a poisonous smile. Barely healed. And he's already found a replacement. Sophie felt her blood boil. Replacement? Interesting. I'd say I'm more of an upgrade. Isabella laughed, but it wasn't a warm laugh. How cute. Let's see how long this lasts. And she walked away, leaving Sophie fighting the urge to throw her shoe at her. Lucas Evans. Sophie turned to him. We're going to have a little talk now. Ex-fiancé. Sophie hissed as Lucas led her to a more private corner. 3 months ago. That's not a detail you mentioned before bringing me to an event she's organizing. Sophie, I can explain. Oh, really? Great. Because I'm dying to know what other surprises you've got hidden. Maybe a secret child, a wife in Las Vegas, a reality show? Lucas ran a hand through his hair. Isabella and I broke up because she wanted to marry for money, not for me. And why does that bother you? You are a billionaire. Exactly. I never know if someone likes me or just my bank account. Sophie looked at him. Lucas, I hired you for $2. If I'd known you were rich, I would have offered at least $5. He laughed, despite the tension. That's exactly the point. Okay, but now your model ex-fiancée is staring at me like I'm something she wants to step on. And I get the feeling she's planning something. Isabella is complicated. Complicated like hard to deal with. or complicated like might make me mysteriously disappear. More the second one. Wonderful. Sophie grabbed a champagne glass from a passing tray. Well, if I'm dying tonight, at least I'll die looking good. During dinner, Sophie tried her best to act like a classy lady. The problem was her idea of classy included asking the waiter if the main course came with fries and trying to guess if the decorations cost more than a car. Sophie, Lucas whispered, you're commenting on the price of everything out loud. Sorry, but that chandelier costs more than my entire college education. It's fascinating how you rich folks spend money. You rich folks, you know, you're kind, homo economicist superiorists. The man sitting next to them, a well-known investor, burst out laughing. She's hilarious. Where did you find her, Lucas? In a coffee shop, Sophie answered before Lucas could Luke. He rented me for $2. The table went completely silent. I mean, Lucas tried to recover. No, Sophie continued cheerfully. That's exactly what happened. I needed a fake boyfriend. He was drinking coffee, and the rest is history. Best investment I ever made. Everyone at the table burst into laughter. Apparently, Sophie's brutal honesty was refreshing in a room full of small talk and polished masks. You have to tell us more, said an older woman, clearly entertained. Well, it all started because my sister was marrying a millionaire, and I didn't want to show up alone and have everyone asking me when I'd get a boyfriend or have kids. And I was like, people, I'm 23, not 80. Lucas watched her with a mix of panic and admiration. Sophie was talking with her hands, telling embarrassing stories about her family, and had the whole table completely engaged. And then my dad said, wear something decent. Sophie imitated her father's deep voice. Like I normally walk around in a trash bag. More laughter. Across the room, Isabella watched it all with an increasingly sour expression. Sophie, Lucas whispered, maybe you should… What? Talk less? Be more mysterious? She turned to him with a mischievous smile. Lucas, darling, you hired me to be authentic. This is Sophie Carter. Unfiltered. That's exactly why she's perfect, said the investor. Finally, someone real in this room full of facades. After dinner, while people mingled for networking, Sophie continued being Sophie. She asked a CEO how he could sleep at night, knowing he made in a day what others earn in a year. She asked a socialite why anyone would need 17 of the same handbag in different colors, and she gave unsolicited investment advice based on common sense and women's intuition. You're all making things way too complicated, she told a group of businessmen. Investing is like dating. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If it's too much trouble, it's not worth it. And if your mom wouldn't approve, run. That's surprisingly wise, one of them murmured. Lucas watched her from across the room, completely captivated. Sophie wasn't trying to impress anyone, wasn't choosing her words carefully. And somehow that made her the most interesting person at the event. She's different, said a voice beside him. Lucas turned and saw Isabella walking up. Isabella, relax. I'm not here to start trouble. I'm genuinely curious about your new friend. Sophie is hard to explain. I can see that. She just told Johnson he should invest in food trucks because street food always sells, and now he's actually thinking about it. Lucas looked over at Sophie, who was enthusiastically explaining something about the food truck economy. She has her own kind of logic. And you're in love with her. Lucas turned to Isabella. What? Please, Lucas. I've known you for 5 years. I've never seen you look at anyone the way you're looking at her. It's complicated. The best stories always are. Isabella took a sip of champagne. Can I make a suggestion? You're going to anyway. Bring her to brunch with me tomorrow. Lucas looked at her like she'd suggested they go skydiving. You want to have brunch with Sophie? Just the two of you? I want to get to know her better. Woman to woman, without you around. Isabella, I know you. What's the plan? No plan. I promise. Just good old curiosity. No, Lucas, if she's as special as she seems, she can handle me. And if she can't, well, better to find out now. Just then, Sophie appeared beside them, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Lucas, you won't believe it. I just convinced 3 people to invest in solar energy by comparing the sun to a reliable boyfriend. It shows up every day and never lets you down. Isabella laughed genuinely for the first time that night. Sophie, may I invite you to something? Of course. How about brunch tomorrow? Just the two of us. I know a lovely place. Sophie looked at Lucas, who seemed to be having a quiet panic attack. Really? You want to have brunch with me? Absolutely. I love getting to know interesting people. I'd love to. Sophie smiled. Sounds like fun. Like a girl's day out. Lucas knew he was in trouble. Sophie had no idea what was going on. And Isabella was definitely up to something. Sophie, he tried to step in. Maybe, oh no. Sophie wagged her finger at him. You're not ruining my first chance at having a rich friend. Just imagine the stories she must have. Isabella smiled sweetly. Oh, darling, I have plenty of stories, especially about Lucas. And at that moment, Lucas knew the brunch would be an epic disaster. But Sophie looked so happy that he couldn't bring himself to ruin it. Great, he sighed. A girl's brunch. It's going to be wonderful. Sophie clapped her hands. What time? 10 a.m. I'll send you the address. Later that night, as they were leaving, Sophie was still thrilled. I loved it. Everyone was so nice. And Isabella even invited me to brunch. Sophie, about Isabella. What? She seems great. A bit intimidating. But I think we'll get along. Lucas looked out the car window and silently prayed to every saint he could think of. This was going to go very, very wrong. Sophie woke up on Saturday full of excitement. She was finally going to a fancy brunch with a former model who just happened to be her fake billionaire boyfriend's ex-fiancé. But she wasn't completely naive. She knew Isabella was up to something. My life really has turned into a soap opera, she muttered, picking out the least inappropriate outfit in her closet. The restaurant Isabella had chosen was exactly the kind of place Sophie would never go to on her own. Minimalist decor, dishes that cost more than her rent, and a crowd that looked like they walked straight out of a high society gossip magazine. Isabella was already there, surrounded by 3 women who looked like her clones. Blonde, rail, thin, and with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Sophie! Isabella waved like they were best friends. Come meet the girls. Sophie walked over, trying not to trip over her own feet. Hi everyone. This is Ava, heir to the Whitmore Labs fortune. Lily, who owns a chain of spas, and Emma, who's married to Senator Carter. Nice. Sophie gave a genuine smile. I'm Sophie, the unemployed ex-waitress who rented a billionaire for $2. Awkward silence. How fun, Ava said with a stiff smile. And how did you meet our dear Lucas? Asked Lily in the tone of someone conducting an interrogation. Well, I was complaining about my life in a coffee shop when he showed up and offered to be my fake boyfriend. I thought he was crazy, but turns out he was just a bored billionaire. Fake boyfriend? Emma's eyes widened. Yep. Lucas agreed to it for $2. Best deal of my life. Isabella gave her a sweet but sharp smile. What an interesting story. So, you don't have a real relationship? We have fun. He pays my bills. I make him laugh. It's like a business deal with emotional benefits. Emotional benefits? Ava laughed. How modern. And you don't feel, I don't know, awkward? Asked Lily. Being supported by him? Sophie thoughtfully chewed a piece of croissant. Awkward? Why? He offered. I accepted. It's kind of like being an influencer. Except, instead of selling makeup, I offer genuine company. Genuine. Isabella repeated. Interesting word. Well, I am who I am. I don't pretend to be sophisticated. I don't know etiquette. And yesterday, I asked the waiter if that $200 dish came with free refills of soda. The women exchanged horrified looks. And Lucas accepts that? Emma asked. He loves it. He said he'd never met anyone, so what was the word? Oh, yes. Refreshing. Refreshing? Isabella repeated with a tone that could freeze the room. Yes. Like cold water on a hot day. Or ice cream when you have PMS. Or finding forgotten money in your jeans pocket. Ava nearly choked. Did you just compare your relationship with Lucas to finding money in your pocket? Hey, it's a great feeling. You all are too serious. Relax. Isabella decided to go on the offensive. Sophie dear, don't you think you're a bit out of your element? Lucas is used to a certain level. Level of what? Sophistication? Elegance? Women who know how to behave in society? Sophie laughed out loud. Oh, I see. You're worried I'm not fancy enough. Well, ladies, relax. I know I'm not on your level. You're like convertible Mercedes. I'm more like a second-hand bicycle, but you know the difference. What? They asked in unison. The bicycle is more fun, more eco-friendly, and when it breaks, you can fix it quickly. The Mercedes costs a fortune. Just to look at, Isabella was visibly annoyed. Sophie, I don't think you understand the pressure Lucas is under. He needs someone who can accompany him to important events, someone who knows how to talk to influential people, like I did yesterday when I convinced 3 CEOs to invest in solar energy using dating analogies. That was luck. That was authenticity. You're all so worried about saying the right thing that you forget to say something interesting. Emma leaned forward. And you think this authenticity will last? Lucas has dated some of the most elegant women in the country, and he broke up with all of them, Sophie pointed out, including our dear Isabella here. Maybe the problem isn't a lack of elegance, but too much pretense. The bomb had been dropped. Isabella flushed red. Excuse me? Look, Isabella, you're beautiful, rich, sophisticated. But let's be honest. If you were really that perfect, you'd still be engaged to Lucas, wouldn't you? We broke up over irreconcilable differences, like him finding out you were more interested in his credit card than in him. Dead silence. Sophie, Isabella said through clenched teeth, I don't think you have any idea who you're talking to. Oh, I do. I'm talking to my fake boyfriend's ex-fiancée who organized this brunch to try to intimidate me, who brought her friends as an audience, and who's finding out that intimidating a former waitress is harder than she thought. Sophie stood up calmly. Ladies, it's been a pleasure. Isabella, thanks for the brunch. And just so you know, Lucas told me why you two broke up. It wasn't irreconcilable differences. It was because he found out you were selling his company's inside information to competitors. Isabella turned completely pale. He told you that? He did. And you know what else he said? That you two were never really close. That you never even saw him without his shirt, because you always insisted on making love in the dark. That's Isabella stammered. A lie? Well, if it's a lie, then you knew each other better than he said. And if it's not a lie, well, that explains a lot about your relationship. Sophie picked up her bag gracefully. Goodbye, ladies. And Isabella, next time you plan an ambush, pick an easier target. And she left the restaurant with her head held high, leaving 4 women in total shock. 10 minutes later, Lucas came running up. Sophie was sitting on the curb, eating a hot dog she bought from a street vendor. Sophie, how did it go? Are you okay? Great. She smiled brightly. I think I made some new friends. Really? I crushed them. It was epic. In the car, Lucas couldn't stop smiling. Tell me everything. Word for word. Sophie recounted the entire story, complete with impressions of the women's faces. Lucas laughed so hard he had to pull the car over. You're amazing, he said, looking into her eyes. I'm a survivor. No. You're so much more than that. There was something different in the way he looked at her, more intense, more real. Sophie felt her heart race. The tension in the car was palpable. Lucas. She slowly leaned toward him. Lucas didn't move. Their lips were almost touching when Lucas pulled away abruptly. I'm sorry. I can't. Sophie was confused and hurt. Why not? It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated. Lucas, Sahil. Sophie, you don't understand. Whatever this is between us, it can't happen. Why not? Because you deserve someone better. And before she could say anything, he started the car and drove her home in silence. Sophie stood on the sidewalk, watching him drive away, completely confused. What on earth had just happened? She woke up Monday morning with a clear thought pounding in her head. Enough. Enough of being treated like entertainment. Enough of strange arrangements. And most of all, enough of Lucas Evans and his emotional complications. The rejection in the car still stung like a slap in the face. Why had she fooled herself into thinking something real could grow between them? She grabbed her phone and typed a direct message. Lucas, our arrangement is over. Thank you for the experience, but I'd rather go back to my simple life. I don't need your financial help anymore. We'll go our own ways. Sophie hit send before she could change her mind. 10 minutes later, the phone rang. Lucas. Sophie declined the call. It rang again. She declined it again. On the third try, she turned the phone off completely. There, she said to herself. Problème solvé. The next few days were a roller coaster of plain, raw reality. Sophie went back to her usual routine, waking up early, job hunting, eating instant noodles, counting coins for the bus fare. This was her real life. No luxury, no perks, no expensive dresses. And that was okay. At least that's what she kept telling herself. Meanwhile, Lucas was finding out that his luxury-filled life had lost all meaning. The office felt dull. Meetings were torture. And even the expensive coffee tasted like cardboard. "Mr. Evans," said Eleanor, his secretary, "on Wednesday, you've canceled 8 meetings this week. I'm not in the mood for meetings. You're not in the mood for anything. Yesterday, you yelled at the printer for being too slow." Lucas knew he was being ridiculous, but he couldn't stop thinking about Sophie. He tried calling her constantly, but her phone was always off or out of range. "Sophie, it's me. Please call me back. I need to explain what happened," he said into the void. "Sophie, I know I messed up. I just want to apologize." He tried in another message. "Please don't ignore me like this. At least let me talk to you," he begged. Sophie listened to the messages but never replied. By the second Friday, Sophie finally got a job at a 24-hour convenience store. The pay was low, the uniform awful, but it was honest work. "You'll work from 2 to 10 in the evening," explained the manager, a tired-looking man in his 50s. "It's quiet. Just a few night customers." "Perfect," Sophie smiled stiffly. "I love the afternoon shift." At first, she even enjoyed it. Her coworkers were funny. The job was simple, and no one asked about billionaires or weird deals. Lucas's phone calls kept coming. Morning, afternoon, and night. Every time, straight to voicemail. "Sophie, it's me again. Please just give me a minute to talk. I know I handled things badly. I just need a chance to make it right. Please don't shut me out like this." Sophie listened to them, but still didn't respond. On the Friday of the second week, she was leaving the store, laughing with Diego, a coworker who always made her laugh with stories about strange customers, and then the woman wanted to return an energy drink because she said it wasn't energetic enough, Diego said, mimicking the customer's voice. Sophie laughed out loud. "People are unbelievable. Sophie, you should go out more. You're always working or studying. What about grabbing a beer on Saturday?" "I don't know, Diego. I'm kind of complicated when it comes to relationships." "Who said anything about a relationship? Just a beer between friends." Sophie was considering it when a black car pulled up sharply in front of them. Lucas jumped out like a storm, looking serious. "Sophie." "Lucas." Her eyes widened. "What are you doing here? I need to talk to you." Diego looked back and forth between them, sensing the tension. Sophie, are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said quickly. "Diego, this is someone I know." "Lucas, this is Diego, my coworker." Lucas stared at Diego with a look that could melt steel. "Coworker?" "Yeah, man. And you are?" Diego asked, clearly annoyed by the glare. "No one important." Sophie answered before Lucas could. "Diego, I'll see you Monday." "Everything's fine." Diego hesitated, but finally walked away after waving at Sophie. "What do you want, Lucas?" Sophie crossed her arms. "I want to talk. You're not answering my calls. Because there's nothing to talk about." "Yes, there is. About what happened in the car." "Nothing happened. You made it clear you don't want anything with me." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Sophie, you don't understand. It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated, Lucas. I'm simple. I like things simple. But what we have isn't simple." "We don't have anything," Sophie said firmly. "We had a deal, and it's over. Now we each go our own way." "Sophie." "Lucas, I'm rebuilding my life. I have a new job, nice coworkers, a routine that makes sense. I'm fine like this." "You're fine going out with that guy?" Sophie looked at him in disbelief. "Are you jealous of Diego? Seriously? It's not jealousy. It's jealousy. And you have no right to be jealous. You turned me down. Remember?" Lucas opened his mouth to argue, but Sophie kept going. "Listen, Lucas, you're an amazing man, successful with everything any woman could want. But you're scared of real feelings, and I'm not going to sit around waiting for you to deal with your emotional baggage. Sophie, please, no. Go home, Lucas. Find someone from your world, someone who understands your complications. I just want peace." Sophie walked into the shop without looking back, leaving Lucas standing on the sidewalk like a statue. Inside, she leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. "I like him," she thought. "I really do. But this was never going to work. We come from 2 different worlds. He needs someone sophisticated. And all I know how to be is myself." She glanced out the window and saw Lucas still standing there, looking at the store. This is for the best, she whispered. But her heart disagreed. Sophie came home after seeing Lucas, feeling completely drained. She collapsed on the couch and stared at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had just happened. "Mia," she yelled, "I need emergency therapy." Mia came out of the kitchen with a bowl of popcorn. From that tone, I'm guessing this has to do with a certain complicated billionaire. He showed up at my job out of nowhere, like a stalker in a suit. "Tell me everything. Don't skip any juicy details." Sophie recapped the whole meeting, including Lucas's obvious jealousy of Diego and their tense conversation in front of the store. "Let me get this straight," Mia said, chewing thoughtfully. "The richest man in Portland showed up at your work because he was jealous of a guy who sells energy drinks. Basically, yes. And you told him to leave because he's too complicated." "Mia, the man can't even kiss me without having an existential crisis." "Girl." Mia sat down facing her. "Can I say something?" "Go ahead." "You're being dumb. Thanks for the support." "No, really, Sophie. The man is clearly in love with you. Has been since high school. He's just scared." "Scared of what?" "Of you finding out he's human. Think about it. He spent his whole life being judged for his money. Then you come along, treat him like a regular guy, and now he doesn't know how to deal with it." Sophie frowned. "Mia, are you defending him?" "I'm defending love." Mia threw her hands up dramatically. "Sophie, when was the last time you truly liked someone?" Well, exactly. Never. And now someone shows up who makes you laugh, treats you well, protects you, and you're going to walk away because he's a little neurotic? A little neurotic, Mia. He's got more locks than a bank vault. So what? Everybody has issues. You do, too. Remember when you didn't leave the house for 3 months because that jerk ex said you were too intense? Sophie made a face. That was different. No, it wasn't. You were afraid to be yourself. Now Lucas is afraid to be himself. You two are perfect for each other. Mia. Sophie, you could be the person who helps him feel normal, and he could be the person who makes you feel special. It's like mutual therapy, but with kissing. Sophie laughed despite herself. Mutual therapy with kissing. Exactly. Look, you can sit here complaining that he's complicated. Or you can go find him and see if it's worth untangling. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? Sophie, you are the happiest I've ever seen you for weeks. Since he left, you've been miserable. I'm not miserable, girl. You had ice cream for breakfast today. Ice cream for breakfast? Sophie sighed. Maybe you're right. Of course I am. Now go find your neurotic billionaire and fix this. But what if he doesn't want to talk to me? Sophie, the man showed up at your job like a jealous lunatic. He wants to talk. All right. Sophie stood up, determined. I'm going to find him. That's what I like to hear. Go, warrior. The next morning, Sophie called Lucas's office. Evans Corporation. Good morning. Hi. I need to speak with Lucas Evans. Mr. Evans isn't available at the moment. May I take a message? When will he be back? I'm sorry, I can't give out that information. Sophie tried 5 more times that week. Always the same answer. Lucas wasn't available. This is strange, she told Mia. Where could a billionaire be that no one knows when he's coming back? Maybe he traveled. Or maybe he's avoiding me on purpose. Sophie decided to investigate on her own. She went to the Evans Corporation building and tried a different approach. Hi, she said to the receptionist. I'm Sophie Carter. I came to return something to Mr. Evans. What's your name again? Sophie Carter. He'll know who I am. The receptionist made a few calls. Mr. Evans is out of town. Can I take a message? Out of town since when? I can't give out that information. Sophie walked out, frustrated. Lucas had literally disappeared. That night at work, she told Diego everything. Girl, you should hire a private detective, he joked. Very funny. Or, Diego paused, thinking, my sister works at the front desk of a private hospital. She always knows the gossip about the upper class. Hospital? Yeah. She said she saw the name Evans on the visitors list this week. Someone in his family is admitted. Sophie's heart skipped a beat. Which hospital? Portland General. VIP wing. Diego, you're a genius. The next day, Sophie went to the hospital. She didn't have a plan, but she needed to find out what was happening. I'm here to visit Mrs. Evans, she told the receptionist. Full name? Sofia panicked. She didn't know Lucas's mother's name. Lucas Evans's mother. The receptionist gave her a suspicious look. Are you family? I'm his daughter-in-law. Sophie lied shamelessly. Room 412, but she's asleep. Only family members are allowed in. Sophie went up to room 412 and peered through the small window in the door. A middle-aged woman lay in bed, connected to several machines, and next to her, in an uncomfortable chair, Lucas was asleep. He looked exhausted, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, deep dark circles under his eyes. He didn't look anything like the confident CEO she knew. Sophie knocked softly and walked in. Lucas woke up with a start. "Sophie, what are you doing here? I came to find you. No one knew where you were." "How did you find me?" "Amateur investigative journalism." She glanced at the woman in the bed. "How is she?" Lucas sighed. "Stable. But it was a big scare. She had a heart attack last week. Why didn't you tell me?" "Sophie, we weren't even talking anymore. But I could have at least been here." Lucas looked at her in surprise. "You would have come?" "Of course, you idiot." They sat in silence for a moment, watching his mother's steady breathing. "She's beautiful," Sophie said softly. "She would love you." Lucas smiled for the first time. "She always said I needed to find a woman who wasn't impressed by money. She has good taste." "Sophie, about what happened in the car." "Lucas, you don't have to explain." "I do." He stood and looked at her. "I pulled away because I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared you'd realize that under all this success, I'm still the insecure nerd from high school. Scared you'd find out I'm just a normal guy with an abnormal bank account." Sophie felt her heart tighten. "You're the only person who treats me like a human being, not like a billionaire. And that terrifies me because I've never wanted anything as much as I want you." "Then why didn't you kiss me?" "Because I knew that if I kissed you, I wouldn't be able to let you go." Sophie slowly moved closer to him. "And who said I want to go?" "Sophie." "Lucas, I was scared, too. Scared I wouldn't be good enough for you, that I wouldn't be able to keep up with your world. You're better than my entire world." This time, when Sophie leaned in to kiss him, Lucas didn't pull away. He pulled her close and kissed her as if she were the air he needed to breathe. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too," she answered with a smile. "Even though I'm complicated, especially because you're complicated. Someone has to uncomplicate you." Lucas laughed and kissed her again, and for the first time in weeks, Sophie felt like she was exactly where she belonged. In the bed, Lucas's mother opened her eyes slightly and smiled before drifting back to sleep. Her son had finally found someone special. The following days at the hospital turned into an oddly intimate routine for Sophie and Lucas. They took turns caring for his mother, Eleanor Evans, who was slowly recovering from the heart attack. Sophie discovered that Eleanor was a retired teacher with a sharp sense of humor, even when unwell, and had clearly raised Lucas to be a kind man. "So, you're the famous Sophie," Eleanor said on Tuesday morning, finally awake and clear enough to talk. "Lucas doesn't stop talking about you." Sophie glanced at Lucas, who blushed. "Oh, really?" He said, "You're the bravest woman he's ever met, and also the most stubborn." "Hey," Sophie protested, laughing. "Stubborn is a positive trait," I said, determined. Lucas defended himself. "Lucas, dear, you said stubborn." Eleanor smiled. "But you said it fondly." Sophie liked Eleanor right away. She had that quiet wisdom that comes from having lived a lot and knowing what really matters in life. During the long hours at the hospital, Sophie and Lucas talked more than they had the entire time they'd known each other. No social events, no outside pressure, just the two of them, hospital coffee, and time to be honest. "Can I ask you something?" Sophie said on Wednesday night as they shared a terrible sandwich from the hospital cafeteria. "Of course. Why did you really take my $2 that day?" Lucas smiled and stirred his coffee. "Do you want the romantic answer or the real one?" "Both. The romantic answer is that I recognized you right away and wanted a second chance. The real answer is, I was having a really bad day." "What do you mean?" "I had just come out of a meeting where 5 people spent 2 hours flattering me over a terrible idea just because I'm rich. I felt completely disconnected from people. Then I heard you complaining about needing a fake boyfriend for $2 and thought, finally, someone who doesn't know who I am, and you just wanted to feel normal." "Exactly. You offered me $2 to just be myself for one night. I couldn't resist." Sophie laughed. "So, I saved you from the existential boredom of being rich." "Something like that." "You're welcome." On Thursday, while Eleanor was asleep, Lucas finally opened up about his childhood. Sophie noticed he tensed up whenever high school came up, so she gently pushed. "Lucas, can I ask about before?" What you were like in high school." He was quiet for a long time, staring out the hospital window. "It's not a pretty story. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." "No, I do. You deserve to know." Lucas took a deep breath. "I was different. Way too skinny. Hue glasses, braces. My mom didn't have much money, so I wore second-hand clothes that never fit right." Sophie felt her chest tighten. "And people were cruel. Very cruel. There was this group of boys who called me Professor Gadget because I was good at math. They'd hide my books, shove my desk, put gum in my hair. That's awful. The worst wasn't the boys. It was the girls who laughed when they did it, or acted like I didn't exist when I tried to talk to them." Sophie swallowed hard, remembering the day she had turned him down without even knowing him. "Lucas, you weren't the worst, Sophie. You were the one that hurt the most." "Why?" "Because I really liked you. I spent weeks working up the courage to ask you to the dance. I practiced in the mirror, wrote notes I never gave you, and when I finally spoke to you, I laughed in your face. You laughed and said, 'Seriously? Are you being serious?' And your friends laughed too? And I realized that to you, the idea of going out with me was so ridiculous it was funny." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "Lucas, I'm so sorry." "No, don't be. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because that moment changed me." "What do you mean?" "I decided no one would ever make me feel small again. I spent the next few years reinventing myself. I worked out, got contacts, wore better clothes. I studied how successful people spoke, how they moved, how they acted. You rebuilt yourself completely, and it worked. In college, people respected me. In business, they feared me. I got everything I ever wanted." But Lucas smiled sadly. "But deep down, I was still that 16-year-old kid scared of being rejected. That's why I could never have real relationships. Part of me was always thinking, if she finds out who I really am, she'll laugh and walk away. And with me, with you, it was different because you already did that. You'd already rejected me in the worst way. So, in a strange way, you couldn't hurt me more than you already had." Sophie reached for his hand. "But you know I've changed too, right?" "I do. And you know what's funny? The woman I fell in love with has nothing in common with the girl who turned me down in high school. You've grown, you've become kind, brave, real, more real than anyone I know. Lucas, Sophie, you make me want to be the most honest version of myself. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just me." Sophie leaned in and kissed him gently. "I love just you, Lucas. Even with all the baggage and neurosis, especially with the baggage and neurosis, they're part of who you are." They held each other in silence, and Sophie felt a connection with Lucas that went far beyond physical attraction or chemistry. It was something deep, built on honesty and mutual acceptance. "Sophie," Lucas whispered, "thank you." "For what?" "For letting me be human." On Friday morning, Sophie was helping Eleanor eat when a familiar voice echoed down the hallway. "Excuse me, nurse. I know it's not visiting hours, but I'm very close to the family." Sophie froze. She knew that voice. Isabella Thornton appeared at the door with an expensive bouquet and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Lucas, darling, I heard about your mother and came right away." Lucas stood up with an expression Sophie couldn't read. "Isabella, what are you doing here?" "I came to see Eleanor, of course." Isabella stepped closer to the bed. "Mrs. Evans, how are you feeling?" Eleanor looked at Isabella with polite coldness. "Much better, thank you." "That's wonderful. I brought these flowers to brighten up the room." Sophie watched with growing irritation. Isabella was clearly putting on a show, acting like the perfect devoted daughter-in-law. "Isabella," Lucas said carefully, "that's very kind of you. But, oh, it's nothing. I've always thought of Eleanor as a second mother." Sophie nearly choked. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by the bold lie. "How interesting," Eleanor said. "Because in the 5 years you dated my son, you visited me, let's see, twice." Isabella flushed slightly. "Well, I was always very busy with work." Of course." Sophie couldn't take it anymore. "Isabella, may I ask how you found out Eleanor was here?" Isabella turned to Sophie as if noticing her for the first time. "Oh, hello, Sophie. Word travels quickly in our community." "Your community?" "The business community. We all look out for each other." "How sweet," Sophie said with a pointed smile. "And here I thought you were just here to stir up trouble." "Trouble?" Isabella laughed, clearly forcing it. Why would I cause trouble? I don't know. Maybe because you're suing Sophie over an Instagram post, Lucas said, his voice dangerously calm. Isabella turned even redder. That's a separate legal matter. It's about revenge, Sophie said bluntly. You're upset because Lucas chose the ex-waitress over the ex-model. Sophie. Lucas gently warned. No, Lucas. Sophie stood up and faced Isabella. Let's be honest here. Isabella, you broke up with Lucas because you wanted an ATM for a husband, not a partner. And now you can't stand that you lost. I haven't lost anything, Isabella said coldly. Lucas will get tired of you. He always does. Isabella, Eleanor said firmly from the bed. I think you should leave. Mrs. Evans, Now. There was no arguing with that tone. Isabella glanced around the room and realized she was clearly being dismissed. Well, she said, trying to maintain her dignity, I hope you recover quickly, Eleanor. Thank you for the flowers, Eleanor replied politely. Isabella walked out with her head held high, but Sophie saw the furious expression on her face reflected in the glass door. Wow, Eleanor said once Isabella was gone. Did she really come here to win my son back in a hospital room? Apparently, Sophie sighed. Some people are shameless. Sophie, Lucas said, taking her hand. Thank you for standing up for me. Always. That's what real girlfriends do. Eleanor smiled. Real girlfriends? I thought you two were still in the it's complicated stage. Sophie and Lucas looked at each other and laughed. I think it's official now, Lucas said. Finally, Eleanor said with a dramatic sigh. Now I can recover in peace, knowing my son won't die alone, surrounded by gold diggers. Mom, what? It's true. Sophie laughed and kissed Eleanor's forehead. You and I are going to get along just fine, mother-in-law. I already liked you, daughter-in-law. And for the first time since the heart attack, Lucas felt like everything was going to be okay. The next morning, Lucas walked into the hospital room with 2 coffees and a determined look. Sophie was already starting to recognize. It was the same look he had before closing major business deals. Good morning, beautiful ladies, he said, handing Sophie a coffee and kissing his mother's forehead. Good morning, dear, Eleanor replied. You look like you have something on your mind. Always sharp. Lucas smiled. Sophie, I need to talk to you about something. Sophie took a sip of the coffee and made a face. If this is about moving into a mansion, the answer is no. It's not about a mansion. It's about work. Lucas, just hear me out. There's a position open at the company that would be perfect for you. Public Relations Department. You're a natural with people. Authentic. Creative. Lucas, no, why not? Sophie zegt, because I don't want people thinking I only got the job because I'm dating the boss. But you could get the job on your own merit. Lucas, I work at a convenience store. I have no experience in corporate public relations. You verbally took Isabella down in front of 3 socialites. That's top-level PR. Eleanor laughed from the bed. He has a point. You two are impossible. Sophie shook her head. Lucas, I appreciate the offer. But I want to build my career on my own. My way, in my own time. Lucas looked at her with a mix of frustration and admiration. You're the only person I know who would turn down a 6-figure job. I didn't know it was 6 figures. Sophie blinked. Still. No. Fine. Lucas sighed. But I have another proposal. Oh my goodness. What now? I want everyone to know we're dating officially. No more secrets. No more fake arrangements. I want to tell the whole world that Sophie Carter is my girlfriend. Sophie nearly choked on her coffee. Lucas, we can do a press release. Show up together at public events. Maybe even give an interview. Stop. Stop. Sophie raised her hands. Lucas, this is too fast for me. Why? Because I'm still processing all this. A week ago, we weren't even speaking. Now we're really together, and you want to announce it to the world? Lucas looked hurt. Are you ashamed of me? Of course not. I'm ashamed of myself. What do you mean? Sophie got up and started pacing the room. Lucas, you're the CEO of a billion-dollar company. I work at a convenience store. People will think I'm with you for your money. So what? Who cares what people think? I care. Sophie stopped in front of him. Lucas, I need more time to get used to this, to make sure it's real. Sophie, of course it's real. For you, maybe. But I've never dated someone famous. I've never had to deal with the press, with gossip, with people analyzing my every move. Eleanor watched them from the bed with interest. Can I give my opinion? Of course, Mom. Sophie's right. Relationships need time to grow before facing outside pressure. Thank you, Eleanor. But, Eleanor continued, Lucas is also right. Hiding the relationship could do more harm than good. Sophie and Lucas looked at each other. What do you suggest? Lucas asked. Keep it private for now, Eleanor said. But set a timeline. A month. Maybe 2. Enough time for Sophie to feel secure. 1 month, Sophie said quickly. Give me a month to get used to the idea. Lucas took her hands. 1 month. But after that, I want to shout to the whole world that you're mine. Deal. 3 days later, Eleanor was discharged from the hospital. Lucas insisted on hiring a private nurse. But Eleanor firmly refused. I'm not an invalid, Lucas. I just had a little heart issue. Little issue? Mom, you almost nothing. I'm fine. And both of you need to stop treating me like porcelain. That evening, Lucas arranged a romantic dinner to celebrate his mother's recovery and to finally have a night just for the two of them. He chose a small, quiet restaurant far from the places where he was usually recognized. This is perfect, Sophie said, looking around. Cozy, intimate, and no photographers. Lucas added, Exactly. They ordered wine, talked about everything and nothing, and for the first time in weeks, Sophie allowed herself to completely relax. Lucas, she said over dessert, can I tell you something? Of course. I'm scared. Of what? Sophie played with her dessert spoon. Of getting hurt, of hurting you, of all this going wrong. It's scary. Every time you smile at me, my heart does something strange. Every time you touch me, I forget how to breathe. And it terrifies me because if it falls apart, it'll hurt more than anything I've ever felt. Lucas took her hand across the table. Sophie, I'm scared too. Really, terrified. You're the first person I truly love. Not the idea of you, not what you represent, but you, and if I mess it up, you won't mess it up. How do you know? Because you're a good man. Lucas Evans. And good men don't ruin good things. They were leaning in to kiss when a familiar voice cut in. How sweet. Sophie and Lucas quickly pulled apart. Isabella was standing by the table with a sly smile. Isabella, Lucas said through clenched teeth. What do you want? Relax. Lucas, I just came to say hello to the happy couple. How did you find us? Sophie asked. Portland isn't that big, darling. Sophie stood slowly. Isabella, are you following us? Following you? Isabella laughed. That's just paranoia. I have dinner here every week. That's not true, Sophie said calmly. This place doesn't even have a Michelin star, and you wouldn't eat here unless it were the last restaurant on earth. Isabella turned slightly red. How dare you? How I dare? Sophie gave her a sweet smile. Isabella, honey, you really need a new hobby. Following people isn't a good one. I'm not following anyone. No? Then how would you explain showing up at the hospital yesterday and now here at this restaurant? A cosmic coincidence? Lucas watched Sophie with a mix of amusement and admiration. Sophie, Isabella said, her voice low and tense, you have no idea who you're dealing with. Sure I do. I'm dealing with a 32-year-old woman who still hasn't gotten over her ex. Honestly, it's kind of sad. Sad? Isabella, have you ever tried therapy? Because being obsessed with an ex isn't healthy. There are professionals who can help with that. Isabella was furious. You're just a gold digger, nothing more. And you're just a bitter ex-fiancé, Sophie replied evenly. But at least I'm a happy gold digger. You're just an unhappy ex. How dare you, Isabella? Lucas stood up. You need to leave now. Lucas, you can't talk to me like that. I can, and I just did. Stop following us. Stop stirring up drama and go get your own life. Isabella looked from Lucas to Sophie, clearly frustrated. This isn't over, she finally said. For us. It ended a long time ago, Lucas replied. Isabella stormed off, and Sophie sat back down. Well, she said, taking a sip of wine, that was fun. You were amazing. Lucas laughed. Being obsessed with your ex isn't healthy. Where do you come up with this stuff? Morning talk shows. They're very educational. Lucas kissed her hand. I love you. I love you too. Even with the crazy ex-fiancé included. Speaking of which, about the lawsuit, Lucas, I don't want to talk about Isabella today. I want to talk about us. Then let's talk about us. And they spent the rest of the evening doing exactly that. The next morning, after their romantic dinner, Sophie woke up with a strange feeling in her chest. Something about the night before was bothering her. but she couldn't quite figure out what. Maybe it was Isabella showing up. Or maybe it was the fear she had confessed to Lucas. When she arrived at work at the convenience store, Diego immediately noticed her mood. Man, you look like you just had a fight with your billionaire boyfriend. We didn't fight yet. Yet? That doesn't sound good. Sophie sighed as she straightened up the shelves. Diego, do you think two people from completely different worlds can actually work out? Depends. Do you love each other? Yes. Do you respect each other? Yes. Do you have fun together? A lot. Then what's the problem? The problem is that he wants to make our relationship public, and I don't know if I'm ready for that. Diego stopped stocking the drinks. Sophie, can I tell you something? Sure. Are you afraid of what other people will think? Or are you afraid of truly committing? His question hit Sophie like a punch to the stomach. I don't know. Because, look, running from a relationship because you're scared of being judged is one thing. Running because you're scared of opening your heart, that's something else entirely. Sophie stayed quiet, letting her friend's words sink in. That night, Lucas showed up at the store during her shift with a determined look on his face. We need to talk, he said without any small talk. Lucas, I'm working. Sophie, we can't keep doing this. Doing what? You pulling away every time things get serious between us. Sophie felt a wave of irritation rise. I'm not pulling away. Aren't you? You turned down the job? You don't want to go public with us. And last night, when Isabella showed up, you got tense with me, too. I was tense with her, not with you. Sophie, you're looking for excuses to keep your distance. That's not true. Then explain to me why every time I bring up the future, you change the subject. Sophie stopped organizing the shelves and looked straight at him. Because the future scares me, Lucas. Okay? I'm terrified. Why? Because you rich, successful, powerful, and I'm just a regular girl working in a convenience store. Sophie, not this again. It's not just about the money. She burst out. It's about expectations. Your life is photographed, analyzed, talked about. Every outfit I wear, every word I say, every move I make, it's all going to be judged. So what? So what? I don't know if I can handle that pressure. What if I'm not good enough? What if I embarrass you? What if... Stop. What if you realize you could be with someone better? Sophie, stop. Lucas's voice echoed through the empty store. Sophie froze, eyes filled with tears. Sophie, Lucas said more calmly, you're sabotaging our relationship because you're afraid of things that might never even happen. But they might happen, or they might not. Sophie, you're asking for a guarantee I can't give you. No relationship comes with guarantees. Lucas, no. Listen. I love you. I love your loud laugh. I love how you treat everyone the same. I love how you make me feel like a regular guy. But I can't keep proving that to you over and over. Sophie felt her heart break. What are you saying? I'm saying you need to decide if you want to be with me or not. For real. No fiar. No excuses. No conditions. I do want to be with you. Then show me. Stop running. Stop making excuses. And be my real girlfriend. Sophie looked into his eyes and saw determination, but also exhaustion. He was worn out from fighting her fears. And what if I can't? Then maybe we're not meant to be. The words hit like a bomb. Sophie felt like the ground had just disappeared from under her feet. Lucas. Sophie, I'm going home. When you decide what you want, call me. And he walked out, leaving Sophie alone in the shop. Crying between shelves of candy, Lucas drove home on autopilot, his heart heavy. He had pushed Sophie into a corner, and now he regretted it. But he also knew he couldn't keep proving his love while she kept running away. At home, he collapsed onto the couch and stared at the ceiling. That's when he saw the $2 bill on the coffee table, the one Sophie had tried to use to pay him on their first day. He'd kept it as a reminder. He picked it up and gave a sad smile. $2, the best investment of my life. For $2, he got the chance to truly know Sophie, to fall in love with her, to learn what it meant to love and be loved for who you really are. It didn't matter if she was scared. It didn't matter if the whole world thought they didn't make sense. That $2 bill gave him something money couldn't buy. True love. And he wasn't giving up without a fight. 2 days later, Sophie was at home, trying to convince herself she'd made the right choice by not calling Lucas. When Mia burst in, yelling, "Sophie, get out of bed right now." Why? Because there's a man outside with a huge sign and flowers. Sophie ran to the window and nearly fainted. Lucas was standing on the sidewalk with a giant sign that read, "Sophie Carter, will you marry me for more than $2?" She rushed downstairs in her pajamas and slippers. "Lucas, what are you doing? Proposing here on the street?" "Sophie, $2 brought me the best thing in my life. Now I want to give everything I have for the chance to spend the rest of my life with you." He got down on one knee right there on the sidewalk and pulled a small box from his pocket. "Sophie Carter, will you marry me? No fear, no conditions, just you and me." Sophie looked at him, at the ring, at the neighbors peeking out their windows. "Lucas, are you sure?" "Completely. You love me for who I am, not what I have, and I love you exactly the way you are. Brave, genuine, and completely nuts." Sophie laughed through her tears. "I am a little nuts. So, will you marry me?" Sophie looked into his eyes and saw everything she had always searched for. Love, acceptance, and the promise of a life full of laughter. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. Yes," she shouted. "Of course, yes." Lucas picked her up and spun her around while the neighbors clapped from their windows. "I love you," he said, slipping the ring on her finger. "I love you too. Even if you are completely crazy for proposing in the middle of the street, I learned from the best." And they kissed right there on the sidewalk while Mia cried happy tears and snapped pictures. $2. Who would have thought $2 could buy a happy ending? 5 months later, Sophie woke up on her wedding day with a strange feeling in her stomach. At first, she thought it was just nerves. It made sense to be nervous on your wedding day. But this felt different. Something she couldn't quite explain. "My favorite bride." Mia burst into the room like a storm, carrying the wedding dress. "How are you feeling?" "Strange," Sophie admitted. "Sitting on the bed, kind of nauseous, actually. It's nerves. I'd feel sick, too, if I were marrying a gorgeous billionaire." Sophie laughed, but the feeling didn't go away. During breakfast, which Eleanor insisted on preparing herself, Sophie could barely eat. "Sweetheart, you need to eat," Eleanor said, worried. "You can't faint at the altar." "I know. It's just, I can't. Must be nerves." Eleanor studied her carefully. As a retired teacher and a mom, she had a special instinct for these things. "Sophie, can I ask you something a bit personal?" "Of course. When was your last, you know?" Sophie froze with her fork in the air. "My last what?" Then it hit her. Oh my goodness. Honey." Sophie ran to the calendar on the kitchen wall and started counting on her fingers. Once, twice, 3 times. "Sophie?" Mia asked, worried. "I have to go," Sophie said quickly. "Now?" "But the wedding is in 4 hours." "I know. That's why I have to go now." Mia and Eleanor exchanged confused looks, but followed Sophie to the nearest pharmacy. "Sophie, are you going to explain why we're buying?" Mia looked at the box in her friend's hand. "A pregnancy test on your wedding day? Because maybe I'm not just nervous sick." "Oh my goodness." Mia's eyes widened. "You think you might?" "I don't know. That's why I'm taking the test." Back at the apartment, Sophie locked herself in the bathroom, while Mia and Eleanor waited outside like 2 anxious statues. "Sophie?" Eleanor knocked on the door. "Are you okay in there?" "I don't know yet. I have to wait 3 minutes." They were the longest 3 minutes of Sophie's life. She stared at the test, then at the mirror, then back at the test. 2 lines. 2 bright pink lines. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness." "Sophie." Mia knocked harder. "What happened?" Sophie opened the door, holding the test with the face of someone who had seen a ghost. "I'm pregnant." Eleanor and Mia were silent for exactly 5 seconds before exploding into screams of joy. "I'm going to be maid of honor." Mia jumped up. "I'm going to be a grandma," Eleanor cried. "I'm going to be a mom," Sophie panicked. "On my wedding day." "How do I tell Lucas?" "At the altar, before the altar. After the honeymoon, breathe, honey." Eleanor held her hands, one thing at a time. "First, let's get you ready for the wedding. Then you decide when to tell him." 4 hours later, Sophie was at the altar of the small church they had chosen, radiant in her simple yet elegant gown. Holding her bouquet with slightly trembling hands, Lucas looked stunning in his tuxedo, his smile lighting up the whole place. "You look beautiful," he whispered as she reached the altar. "Lucas, I need to tell you something," she whispered back. "Now?" "Now." The minister started the ceremony. But Sophie barely heard a word. How do you tell the man you're pregnant in the middle of your wedding ceremony? If anyone knows of any reason why these two should not be joined, said the minister. Sophie seized the dramatic pause. Lucas, she whispered urgently. I'm pregnant. Lucas froze completely, blinked once, twice, 3 times. What? He whispered back. Pregnant. You know, baby. 9 months. Diapers. Lucas stared at her, as if processing information in a foreign language. We. When? Probably that night after the romantic dinner. The one Isabella interrupted. Lucas, the minister asked, is everything all right? Lucas turned to the minister, then to Sophie, then to the congregation of family and friends, all watching expectantly. She's pregnant, he announced to the whole church. Complete silence. Then Eleanor stood up and began clapping. I'm going to be a grandma. The entire church erupted in applause and cheers. Sophie covered her face in embarrassment, but Lucas pulled her close. Are you sure? He asked, his eyes shining. 3 tests. All positive. We're going to have a baby. We are? Lucas lifted her off her feet and spun her around right there at the altar while everyone laughed and cried at the same time. Lucas. Sophie laughed. The minister hasn't finished yet. Minister, Lucas said, still holding Sophie. Could you speed this up? I need to kiss my pregnant wife. The rest of the ceremony passed in a joyful blur of tears, laughter, and declarations of love. When the minister finally said, You may kiss the bride, Lucas kissed Sophie with a passion that felt like it could stop time. The crowd cheered louder, and Sophie, despite her initial embarrassment, melted into the moment, her heart full. I love you, Mrs. Evans, Lucas whispered against her lips. I love you too, Mr. Section Evans, Sophie replied, her voice soft but brimming with certainty. And so does our baby. 3 weeks later, Sophie was settling into the new house they had moved into after their honeymoon. While exploring, she noticed something peculiar on the wall of Lucas's office. A small, elegant frame. Inside it were the $2 bills she had given him that first day at the coffee shop. Lucas, she called out, come here. He hurried in, concern flashing across his face. What happened? Is the baby okay? The baby's fine. But this, she pointed to the frame. You framed the $2? Lucas grinned. That familiar smile, that always made her heart skip. Of course, it was the best investment of my life. $2, Lucas. That day you didn't rent me. You set me free. What do you mean? You set me free from the idea that my only worth was my money. You set me free from my fears, from my insecurities. You set me free to just be myself. Sophie felt her eyes well up, a common occurrence lately thanks to pregnancy hormones. Lucas Evans, you are the most romantic man in the world, and you are the most amazing woman in the world. Even when you tell me I'm going to be a dad at the altar. Hey, you said it was the best surprise of your life. It really was. He pulled her close, his hand resting gently on her still small belly. You two are the best things that have ever happened to me. 2? You and our daughter. How do you know it's a girl? Father's intuition. Sophie laughed and kissed him, marveling at how life could take such unexpected turns. Who could have imagined that $2 at a coffee shop would lead to this? A joyful marriage, a baby on the way, and the love of her life by her side. You know what's funny, she said, resting her forehead against his. What? People always say love doesn't come with a price, but ours did. $2. Best deal ever. And they sealed their happy ending with a kiss filled with promises, laughter, and the certainty that, no matter what the future held, they would face it together.